You're watching the SegPay News Network. Today we're talking ever-changing content regulations with the attorney Corey Silverstein. Hello again, it's Mark Pettit here in the SegPay studio in the United States. We continue to follow the ever-changing rules and regulations as it relates to adult content and specifically for high-risk merchants. We have one of our favorite guests joining us today. It is Corey Silverstein. He is an attorney who specializes in the high-risk space. So, Corey, it's great to have you back on the program.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Corey, we should give our viewers just a warning that some of the information we're going to discuss today is a bit sensitive. So just giving you that warning before we get into it. So Corey, let's start in the UK where it seems like things are always changing. There are expanded regulations on certain forms of adult content. Can you talk to us about those types of content and what's going on here?
Yeah, in essence, what we've really seen is the UK has become very much one of the leaders in the world right now in terms of, let's call them the Gestapo content police force, if you want to call it that. And so what we've now had is we've had a pretty substantial development where the UK, through its Online Safety Act, has now actually created and has put forth a law whereby certain types of content are in essence illegal to be published and viewed in the United Kingdom. Most notably, the content that is making headways in our industry right now is content that is depicting asphyxiation and choking.
So asphyxiation and choking. So what kind of penalties are we talking about here, Corey, if that content is found on those sites?
That's a great question. And the penalties are quite severe because it starts off with potentially monetary fines, and the monetary fines can be massive. It could be a set fine, or it could even be a percentage of the gross worldwide turnover that a website is making. Additionally, in an even more serious case, ultimately it can be criminal in nature. This could ultimately be criminal charges against the operator of a platform offering this sort of content. Of course, they still have the ability also to do such things as IP blocking, going to your web host, going to your domain registrar, and so forth. So in this particular case, the UK has made it very clear that they are going to be very aggressively pursuing this sort of content.
And is that the main topic you want to cover today, Corey, is asphyxiation? Are there other types of content that we should wrap into this?
There's actually some additional content that needs to be referenced because in this same edits to the UK Safety Act, there's also now specific rules related to content that is going to depict incest. So when we talk about incest, we're now talking about specifically content that might depict step siblings, step parents. But notably, the laws apply to content that would be depicting anyone in these roles as minors. Quite candidly, that kind of has always been the rule, that has always been the law. You're never supposed to be, depicting underage performers. So most platforms are already going to be in compliance with that particular rule, so to speak. But ultimately, the asphyxiation, strangulation, choking, that's the big one where this is going to be hitting the entire industry very hard because there really is such a large percentage of adult content out there that does contain some degree of people putting hands on the neck, hands on the face, covering mouth, nose, etc. And
that's interesting. It seems like this is going to really cause some challenges for the platforms. How do they react to this, Corey? And how do you know what level we're talking about? Who makes that decision?
The platform owners are going to have to make these decisions. I mean, this is a major development. And ultimately, platform owners are now going to be faced with some very difficult decisions. One decision is obviously that if they so choose, they could just block the UK altogether, geo-block it, because if they just aren't in a position where they can remove all that particular content from their platform, just geo-blocking might be the most efficient way to go. Other websites are going to be doing such things where they're going to be reviewing all of their libraries of content and removing or editing that content so that the portrayals of the asphyxiation, suffocation, choking will be removed. And then some websites are actually kind of taking a little bit of a different approach where they are going to be launching an entirely different version of their site that will be accessible in the UK. So when you go to the site, you'll have one version if you're visiting that site from the United States, but if you go to the site and you're detected to be coming from a UK IP address, you'll see a completely different version of the site that will be in compliance with these laws.
So that sounds like twice the expense possibly for the platform operators.
It is going to be insanely expensive. I've spoken to numerous different clients of mine who are in this very situation, and the cost of going through entire libraries, which oftentimes consist of thousands upon thousands of video, and having to manually review or even try to use some AI tools. But unfortunately, so far, what my clients have informed me is that using the AI tools to try to identify and edit this content hasn't worked out very well. It's resulting in a lot of false positives and false negatives, which is causing havoc. So we're talking about substantial man hours, substantial costs in terms of editing content, and major changes to the platform. But going back to your original question, Mark, we are talking about a regulation that could potentially impose criminal penalties. This is not just about money. This is about something that could land someone in jail. So, obviously everyone should be really paying attention to this development.
This is absolutely serious business. So, Corey, it seems like there could be instances where content is legal here in the United States and illegal in the UK.
Yes, this is another major problem, because ultimately what has now happened is that a ton of content actually that is perfectly acceptable and perfectly legal to be published in the United States remains in that fashion. But unfortunately, that very same content will no longer be legal in the United Kingdom. So this is creating a massive problem, because a lot of people misunderstand the fact that it doesn't matter that the publisher itself is in the United States. That's not what the question is. The question is where is the content available? And so platform operators are really struggling with this concept, and a lot of them are very frustrated because they say, listen, I'm in the US, I have nothing to do with the UK, I don't want to be in the UK. And now they're potentially subject to their laws, or they are subject to their laws. And this is really rattling a lot of people's cages right now.
I think it was the Supreme Court that said we can't explain pornography, but we know it when we see it, right? Who is the judge of this?
Well, in the UK, here's where things get complicated. So in the UK, ultimately what they're doing is they are going to be putting Ofcom in charge of this to basically be the police force, so to speak. And as we all have now learned from Ofcom, Ofcom is the same organization that was placed in charge in the UK of the UK's age verification investigations and fines and such. And so far, there has been a lot of backlash against Ofcom in terms of the investigative techniques they've been utilizing, the fines that they've been arbitrarily issuing. There's now a lawsuit that's been filed against Ofcom by Meta as a result of Ofcom seemingly randomly just deciding, what penalties are going to be. And this is a big problem. And so ultimately what you now have is you have a kind of a government agency that's going to be given quite a bit of power here. Moreover, frankly, this would never happen in the United States, simply because, again, we have the First Amendment that stops this sort of content-based restrictions.
And Corey, are we talking about everybody from the larger players all the way down to individual content creators? Are they subjected to the same regulations here?
Yeah, we're going down to everyone, because look, the major platforms, obviously the majority of them operate in the UK if they haven't already blocked it. And then a lot of content creators, when they're publishing their content, a lot of them are publishing content on their own websites. So a lot of them have their own websites. And if those websites are accessible in the United Kingdom, this is absolutely going to impact them.
Wow. So this is OnlyFans, individual creators, wherever they are, they're subject to these regulations.
Absolutely. This is going to impact everyone from the large platform all the way at the top that has the tens of millions of viewers a day, to smaller business person who might just have an individual website, who's based here in the US and simply has hosts and has their own membership website. This is going to absolutely impact them.
It seems like we're going through a cycle where censorship is becoming more prevalent around the world. Are we going to get to the point, Corey, where it depends on where you are to what version of the internet you get to see?
Absolutely. I mean, that is where we are already. We've seen this in numerous different facets with age verification, because the age verification laws have various different nuances from the different states in the US and then to all of the different countries, whether we're talking about the UK, France, Canada's got one coming down the pipeline here. Everyone has their own little nuances to the law. And so in reality, yes, what we are looking at here is we're looking at a very complex world where a website used to be able to operate one site across the world globally, is now very much going to be in a situation where they're going to have to make decisions about first of all, are we even going to allow people to access our site from that jurisdiction? And if they are, what is the variation of our website for that jurisdiction going to look like? I think that that is very much the direction we're going.
Corey, let's talk about unintentional access. Let's say there's a video that's on your computer that's your private property, but it's choking. Are you subject as an individual user to these same sorts of penalties?
Well, that's a little bit of a different situation, because if you have content on your individual laptop, you're not necessarily publishing it. The UK law that we're talking about, specifically the Online Safety Act, is more to do with the publication of the content. So what people and users really do have to realize is that they are entering into an era now where they have to be conscientious about where they are and what location they're in. And is it possible that they end up having something on a laptop or on their device that may be illegal in the jurisdiction where they're visiting or what have you? Yes, these are all major issues and concerns that are becoming, let's call them, bigger concerns.
And let's talk about these platforms. Are they just going to start blocking regions like the UK and just geo-block everybody?
Some will, yes. Some platforms, that is the decision that they're making. And it's going to be a platform-to-platform decision. A platform is going to be taking a hard look at their financials. They're going to be looking at how much traffic they have coming from the UK, how much money they're generating from the UK, and then they're going to balance that against how much compliance is actually going to cost. If a particular large platform has a very small profit margin and traffic base coming from the United Kingdom, it's going to be very difficult for them to justify the expense, which could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, to edit all of that content and in essence relaunch completely in that country. So yes, there are going to be some platforms that already have made the decision to stop giving access to customers in the UK, or they are in the process of doing that analysis now and figuring out what they're going to do.
The UK, as you said, seems very aggressive and has been at the forefront of this. Are we seeing this in other countries? What can we expect to happen, Cole?
We are. And, one of the things that I saw is that after the UK made their big media splash about this, we saw Ireland is now trying to jump on board, and they're talking about creating some of their own unique rules for extreme content. And so as much as I would wish and hope that it's not the case that we're going to see more of this, unfortunately, I do believe that we are going to see more of this, at least for the time being. Right now, if you look at, there's a lot of conversation that has to be had about who's in control of countries. We have a lot of conservative governments and a lot of right-wing politicians that are very much in control of a lot of governments, and they are very much anti-pornography, and they have very different views on what sex and sexuality should be. So for those particular governments in particular, yes, I foresee that we're going to see more of this. And even in the UK, the Baroness, so to speak, that was very much pushing this particular law is already calling for more. So it's, we're not even sure if this is going to be the end of the UK making more aggressive steps in terms of policing content.
The last time you were with us, Corey, we were talking about age verification and what was happening around the world. Are there updates that you can give us on what's happening in that world?
Well, the age verification issue is here to stay. I mean, ultimately, the adult industry did not get the decision that they wanted out of the Paxton case down in Texas. And so in the US, they used an entirely unusual step of applying intermediate scrutiny to the age verification law. So in terms of the US, age verification is here to stay. The federal government is working on their own version of federal age verification. And we've seen from various different politicians that this is high on their agenda, and they are trying to get their federal age verification laws pushed through before the end of this term. Ted Cruz has been a huge proponent of it. That is, a reason that the industry needs to be carefully watching, because we very much could be looking in the very near future at federal age verification. So we're definitely seeing that. And of course, we've seen enforcement actions all across the country. Various different states have been very aggressive. The state of Florida's Attorney General Office has been very aggressive. We've seen private lawsuits. All of these laws that are out there now are being utilized. So, from the last time we spoke, what we're really seeing now is, I would call it a ramping up of enforcement, where before we were very much in the phase of more of these laws being created, pushed through, passed. Now we're more in the ramping up of enforcement phase.
Corey, you mentioned AI earlier in the discussion. You would think that that would be a natural tool to help with age verification and so forth.
You would think so, but here's where here's the rub, so to speak. So yes, facial estimation and digital ID technologies might reduce exposure to sensitive identity documents, but it still involves the collection and processing of highly sensitive data. And what we have seen in the past few months is that, as we warned the courts in the Texas case, was that there are going to be privacy issues, there are going to be data breaches, there are going to be nefarious people out there that are going to target age verification providers to try to hack the data that they're collecting and stuff. So by no means is AI going to make this safe. And I still, to this day, I have massive reservations about what governments are doing here in terms of mandating age verification, because of just the amount of data that is now being collected. And of course, these laws do have requirements on these age verification providers to do so anonymously and securely and so forth. But Mark, you live in the same world that I do right now, and every single day, every morning, you wake up to headlines of this person got hacked, that person got hacked, this data breach, that data breach. We're relying on these third-party services or these third-party platforms to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, and having security protocols in place, having policies in place, having the right personnel in place. And my fear is that the reliance on AI, I don't believe that actually is the safest way to go. I actually think that that's going to open up the door to more data breaches, more exploitations. Look, AI at the end of the day is coding, is computer coding, and that's what it is. And as much as we kick that word around, AI, the fact is that it's not perfect. AI is still in its infancy. And so while, yes, we're going to see a ton of platforms relying on the various AI tools to conduct age verification, that does not mean that I'm confident in their safety. And I think both platforms, users, and everybody needs to really consider that before they use whatever age verification tool is coming out. And it's fast and furious right now. We're seeing new age verification providers and tools being proposed. And, everyone seems to have their angle. So there's a lot of thinking and worry to be associated with where all that data is going.
And as we wrap up, Corey, we talk a lot about compliance here. On that topic, what policies should merchants have in place? What should they be looking for if they don't have them in place?
Well, listen, I can give you a very long list, and there is a very substantially long list of documents and compliance policies that website operators need to have. And I can tell you that more than 50%, more than half of the industry is still very much doing this wrong. There are substantial changes that need to be made to all website operators, terms of service, policies, their content moderation policies, their age verification, age insurance policies, their record retention policies, their consent verification procedures. Now we have massive issues with the EU in terms of GDPR compliance. And so there are so many policies that used to go with that. So to give you an example, when my office now prepares a website to be a fully compliant platform in the industry, 20 years ago, I probably would have had to draft 4 or 5 different legal documents for them. Now the package of documents is over, right now I think it's over 22 different packages of disclaimers that we have to provide our clients now to post on their website and to have as internal policies. And there are way too many platforms out there that are still living in the past and are not taking this seriously. And for those people that have been lucky and are still living under the platforms that only have 3 or 4 sets of legal documents, because frankly this timing hasn't caught up to them yet, it's going to catch up to them. And I'm telling all of the people in the industry to get very serious about this issue and making sure that they're consulting with professionals so that they know what they need, how it has to be implemented. There's a huge issue also about, it's not just taking terms and policies and throwing them up on a website. It's also about following them, enforcing them, and dealing with all the various different rules. New laws like the Take It Down Act, for example, have very specific guidelines and very short timelines for a platform to remove content before they could be in serious trouble. So this is a new world.
Exactly. Well, Corey, you are a great friend to SegPay. We thank you for everything you do for us. And if you're looking for an expert attorney in this space, Corey is the man. Corey, thank you so much for joining us here on the SegPay News Network.
It's my pleasure, Mark.
All right, and we've got your back, merchants, so stay with us right here on the SegPay News Network for more great interviews just like this one. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.